My name is Cameron Junup, and I'm a white Canadian settler. The picture on the screen is something that is very important to me. Years ago, my mom and I created this sign out of trees found on our yard. We also made one for my grandmother out of a tree in her yard and for both of my uncles. Back almost 5 years ago, I never would have taken a second glance at using a dead tree to create such a beautiful sign. After this class, I realized that I should have given something back to the land for allowing me to create it. So instead of prior to using these materials, I had to do it after. But I chose to lie tobacco down under each of the tree spots we took from in 3 different yards and said a prayer at each one. This was my offering as a way of thanking the Creator and Mother Nature for providing materials that I was able to use to create an art piece that will be in my family for generations. When it comes to thinking about how I am personally connected to treaties, I'm still very unsure. Before attending university and before this class, I always thought of treaties as a legal document. I now realize that treaties are not only in our past, but present in our everyday lives and an important part to our future and reconciliation. As I reflect on my learnings from this class, I think about the ways in which my family has benefited from treaties and from the land we live on and farm. I had to readjust and reevaluate a lot of things I had learned from my elementary and high school classes in order to deepen my understanding and begin practicing Miskaswin, so that I can understand who I am in relation to treaties. Knowing what I do now about our past and the hard truths that I have come to know will make me a better teacher. Learning these things, such as how drastically we separate our past from white settlers and Indigenous people, the intergenerational trauma that still lives inside Indigenous people today, the history of treaties, residential schools, the truth about how underrepresented these things are in our public school systems. Just like a quote I pulled from Module 8 of the 4 Seasons of Reconciliation says, while Indigenous children were being mistreated in residential schools, being told they were heathens, savages, and inferior people, the same message is being delivered to in the public schools of this country. As a young teacher, I've had the opportunity to be exposed to some amazing Canadian authors that read age-appropriate and accurate stories about the past and about Indigenous people. In this picture, I've shown four of a few of my favorite books that I've used to teach in the classroom. I look forward to expanding my library and sharing this literature with my future students. This picture is of my farmhouse that I have lived in since 2007. My family began farming over 120 years ago, beginning with my great-grandfather, who farmed 640 acres. My grandpa, 2 great-uncles, and my dad now farm over 7,200 acres, and now still own this same farm. Because of this class, I now realize that my family has been practicing Pimachwin, making a living on this land for many years, as well as practicing living together on this land and being one with this land, Wetaskawin. Every year, year after year, my family seeds crops, helps them grow, and harvests them to feed the world. Without the land, my family wouldn't be who we are today. It is an extremely important part of the world to us and our future. I chose to artistically represent my learnings with an RM map of Vanscoy and Purdue, which is where the majority of our land and yards reside, although we do also have some in the RM of Montrose. Each red pin represents a homestead. The one north is my great-grandparents' yard, the one to the west is my parents' yard, and the other 2 eastward are my grandparents and my uncles. Although I'm aware that ownership is not part of the Indigenous culture, that is not my culture. My connection to the land comes from farming and giving back in as many ways as we can to nature and to the world. The way my family chooses to show respect and appreciation to the land is the only way I know how, by caring for it and nurturing it through agriculture. This may look different than the Indigenous culture, but it is the way my family and I believe in and have provided me with a strong connection to this culture and to the Creator. When I think of treaties now, I think about how important it is that we practice Mi'owachituin if we as teachers are going to work towards reconciliation for ourselves and for the future generations. We need to work together to ensure we are continuing to build strong relationships with all people. These relationships need to go beyond just between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people, and be able to understand that it takes all living things on the land to reach these goals. In one of our Finally Weekly engagements, a quote from Module 6 describes very accurately how our future needs to look, and to wrap up my thinking. It's actually about building new relationships, having Indigenous peoples involved at the very beginning in any project or process where their rights may be affected, and sitting there as true partners in helping guide the decision-making process where their lives and concerns are heard, taken into account, and addressed.